Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Cyberpunk Edgerunners, Season 1, Episode 1, Let You Down. This is the first episode where we discover a new concept they've just invented for fiction. It's called torture porn. That's not true, actually. Torture porn is actually different than this. That's like the Saw series. No, this is trauma porn, or tragedy porn, depending on how you think of it like that. It's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Alright, so let's see. Your cat's dead, your family's dead, your lover's dead, you're dead, you're back. But then you're tortured forever. There's a giant, like, spine that's smacking you in the face every now and again. Your soup was too hot and too cold at the same time. You clipped a nail accidentally, and now you have a little bit of makeup running. There you go. Boom. Yeah, your friends are dead after they healed you, and then your heals didn't work, so it was all for nothing. You get it. It's piling it on. And here's the catch. And I do actually want to talk about this concept very briefly here. Because at a certain point it becomes noise, right? I've actually talked about this a lot when it comes to fiction. A lot of fiction, if you pile on something, whether it's trauma or violence or whatever, like at a certain point it becomes noise. It stops having an impact, right? So there's plenty of things like that. Yeah, the last straw is valuable for characterization, but you could have done the last straw like 6 steps earlier, right? Instead here, I found myself tuning it out after a certain point. I'm actually not joking. It's like, as soon as his mother died and the trauma thing showed up, I was like, okay. And then it just kept piling on, and then it just kept piling on, and then it just kept piling on, and I'm just like, okay. Like, I haven't moved, is my point. You already did it. You peaked. The vial of care is full. There's no additional filling up the vial. Anyways, so first, thank you, Mike Romano. If you do change your name, let me know. I will change it in all my records. You should change it to Mike Death Romano. Don't do that. Yeah, actually, Walking Dead. You're absolutely right. Walking Dead, the show, although kind of the comic as well, leans into this exact same aesthetic. It's actually one of the things I don't like about that show. Like, there's some good cinematography and some good acting and some good, traditional effects and all that, and even some cool plot lines, but it's just misery. It's just misery, It's something I've talked about before, is where I don't mind a dark story, right? In fact, I actually really like dark storytelling. But the way I like to describe it is, I like when darkness is the beginning or middle of the sentence, not the end. If things are dark, period, then we have a problem, because at that point, that's just bleak. That's just awful. And I just stare at that like, what's the point of that? Because that's literally the first thought that comes into my mind. What's the point of this? And you already gave across the point. The point is the misery itself. The point is to just be awful. Which is not as engaging. Yeah, it also becomes predictable and unrealistic. It's the exact same thing. Game of Thrones has this rep, but actually isn't that bad about it. That's hysterical, Von Falkenstein. Oh my god. Do I not enjoy 40K? I've never enjoyed 40K. Are you kidding me? I've given speeches that pretty much line up with exactly what I'm saying right now, which boils down to, this is why I don't like 40K. Yeah, Game of Thrones actually isn't that bad about this, as weird as it sounds, but there are some fictions which are too kill-happy. And I've talked about them before. Because both sides of that equation are wrong for pretty much the exact same reason. If you're never willing to kill off a character, then there's no tension or threat. Let me share an anecdote. This is a real story. Just a few weeks ago, we were going through the Star Trek lore run, and there was this section where we were watching what happened, and I asked the lore runnee what they thought of what was happening, and the first thing they said was, well, obviously character isn't going to die, but ... and then they shared their thoughts on the episode and the premise. And that stuck with me, because the fact that that's the beginning of that sentence shows why they're never going to die is a bad thing. But again, the other direction is just as bad for the exact same reason, because if anybody can die at any time for any reason, and you do it too often, it loses all impact. It doesn't mean anything. Oh, no, they're dead. Okay, next. Now, I'm not saying this is guilty of either. It's just something that is actually a problem in fiction. And I often feel like one of the reasons writers will lean towards the other way is because they're overcompensating for the fact that so much of fiction has characters who can't die. Plot shields, right? What about Railway Empire? City Builder block. And Master of Orion block. Yeah, you need to have death mean something. I know that sounds weird, but it's true. You need to have death mean something. It can mean a lot of things. Anyways, so let's get to the episode in question and the show in question. Let's get this out of the way first and foremost. It's anime. I don't like anime. That's the last time I'm going to bring it up. That's the first thing I'm going to bring up right there. Let's just say that. Moving on. This is done by Studio Trigger. They've done quite a few things. There are two things they've done that I actually recognized but have not watched. That's Kill the Kill and Little Witch Academia. Again, haven't seen either of those, but cool. We opened with a dude shotgunning a cop in the face. No comment. Cyber Psycho, gore, completely ignoring incoming fire, some super speed, and they showcase that a little bit. The local cops are all mulch, so they bring in actual enforcers who show up and actually jack into the dude, fry him remotely, and then, oh, it was all just a brain dance. Okay. Yep, setting the tone, pretty much right up the bat there. Okay, I do, as weird as this is gonna sound, I like how they don't take any time to explain anything that just happened. For those of you who don't know, I've been playing Cyberpunk, the pen and paper thing, since I'm not sure when, actually. Like since 2005, 2006, something like that. It's been a minute. It's been a minute. I'm not sure the exact timing, but it's been a while. And obviously I've played Cyberpunk, the video game, and a couple other things that are set within it. So all this stuff is old hat to me. We have a Cyber Psycho who has some military-grade ice, which they have to pull down. And they do, and that shocks his system, so he no longer has access to his cyberware. And that cyberware is why he can take shotgun shots to the face and not really have any issue until finally someone shows him to the actual face, takes out his brain, and there you go. The enforcers who show up are the actual corpo police. All of that lines up. They even mention ice here. Like, everything lines up, and they don't actually do a lot to explain, which is good. I'm completely in favor of that. But what's really strange is they also go out of their way to also have too much explanation. It's really strange. I've noticed that some of the scenes are very, very well dialogued, for lack of a better way to put it. But then some of the scenes are not very well dialogued. And then some of the scenes are way over dialogued. In fact, I was reminded very strongly of Persona during several scenes. Like, he just feels the need to over... of course, I'm watching the dub. He just feels the need to over-explain half the things that are happening at any given point in time. Like, there's a lot of weirdly pointless narration in a show that's actually pretty smart about its exposition. So it does exposition very right and wrong at the exact same time, and that's just confusing. We then see some quick and dirty... We get the trauma line beginning, but actually this intro sequence does a lot to establish the setting very, very efficiently. So he's going to wash his clothes, but he can't finish the washer because the washer has run out of money. He also needs to buy an upgrade for school, which, of course, we don't know the context for that. We do get the context later. But that says all it needs to. It's basically a licensing fee is functionally what he's looking for. She is, of course, exhausted after working all night. Their room is just one big empty flat with ads playing everywhere, just in the background. When we go outside, we see people sleeping on concrete, trash piled up to the point where it's blocking the stairwell, people vomiting, masturbating, having seizures, and holding someone with a gun. All of this is in broad daylight in a place that looks awful and concrete. Boom, boom, boom. There's Cyberpunk. Or, to be slightly more accurate, there's Night City. There's your setting. It does a very good, very efficient job of establishing everything. And you'll notice it doesn't linger on any of these points. Just, boom, here you go, boom, here you go, boom, here you go. And you get the vibe even if you're not paying careful attention, but if you are paying careful attention, you can put together pretty quickly just how messed up this city really is. Then they go to the classroom where everyone just kind of sits down in chairs while in uniform, and this is when we find out what the licensing update was for. Okay, that's messed up. Unfortunately, the custom firmware doesn't really work out, so that sucks. There's a scene where she's like, oh, please don't do this, and it's like, oh, it's okay. It's not a matter of money, but you are going to pay us. Yeah, I noticed that this is an Arasaka classroom, by the way. I caught that. And yeah, I also noticed that his gadget is a lot more basic compared to everyone else's. The wreath is what they called it. I also noticed that the first place they were going to was something called a meditation room, which has its own implications. We never actually see it because it glitches out as soon as he connects to it. So, yeah, his mother has a line that I actually rather enjoyed. You tried to go around the system and now it'll cost us 10 times as much. Yeah. And then he has some dialogue, which is not what I would call particularly well written, especially for someone of his age. But it does sound like a manifesto, a very, very brief manifesto, or perhaps a character description. This is what punk means. Because punk is all about rebellion against authority, whether it's steampunk or cyberpunk or whatever. And I know we've drifted from that over the years, but that is what the original concept is there for. Screw authority, right? This is even mentioned later when the rich kid shows up and starts bullying him. It's like, I don't care about the fact that you can pay. I care about the fact that you're a punk. He doesn't use the word punk, but that is what he means. So I think I just answered Pharaoh's question on accident. Yeah, let's pass that. So then we have the usual schooling problems, all that normal kids have, and in real life and have for years. And then we add on top of it all the detriments of the setting, which is awful, of course. And then they do absolutely nothing wrong. This is probably the most interesting scene in the whole episode, because the point here is that they did not, or I guess she did nothing wrong. She works a good job, actually a pretty well-paying job if she's part of the, oh god, what are they called? I can't actually think of it. There's actually a term for it. The step below trauma team. Because trauma teams, they're up there. But then there's like, no, she's not in trauma team. She's below that. And I can't think of what that's called. They even mention it in the episode, and I can't frickin' remember the frickin' name of it. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Stupid now. Meat wagon! She's a meat wagon. There we go. I knew they had a term for it. Odd. But the point is, that's actually a pretty well-paying job. That's actually a pretty solid gig for someone. So she's got a decent job. She's staying in her lane. She's acquiescing to everything that's demanded of her. She's paying off her debts. Everything's cool and everything's going right. And she still ends up getting locked into the system and then killed by said system for having done nothing wrong. That's a really strong theme of Cyberpunk, whenever Cyberpunk is written correctly, is that it doesn't matter if you do right or wrong, you're still someone who can become a victim of something through no fault of your own. It's one of the biggest reasons why so many characters tend to go punk, is because they initially started trying to follow the rules, and then they got knocked off course, again, because the system is wrong. Exactly, Dakota, because the system is the flaw here. That's the point. That's why you go punk. Again, this is a central thematic core to the whole setting. It's interesting because I don't want to complain about this, but it's interesting that the kid is already leaning punk, and it's the mother who is the one that is trying to go along with that. Yeah, you do everything right and you still lose, because you don't matter. At least not to the people who do matter. No, exactly, Triexia. You're absolutely right. I mean, not to get too much into this because this doesn't really count, but when it comes to like one of the biggest things when it comes to making a new character in Cyberpunk is there's a whole character creation process where you actually roll for your backstory, and a lot of that stuff boils down to things were good and then stuff went wrong because of the system, and so now you're punk, and that's just the vibe. This is the theme. Yeah, Data was always punk. So Trauma Team shows up and naturally doesn't save either person. Why would they? Of course, I'm saying that with understanding and knowledge of the system. But again, all of this is here for people who don't know Cyberpunk. I'm not going to complain about how much this episode does to just establish the setting, because that makes sense. We actually have quite a bit of evidence now, since since Edgerunners has been out for a minute, that a lot of people, this was their first exposure to the Cyberpunk setting. And indeed, they jumped right from here into the game as a direct consequence of that. So yeah, you got to have that first impression roll. So yeah, they show up and they actually say they're not on the package, so move on. And his response is, "What? Why? Why would you do that?" No, like it's the kind of thing I normally would complain about. But again, this is trying to introduce the setting, so I'm gonna let that go a little bit. There is and this of course immediately leads into like the trauma conga line is just getting started, because we cut to the hospital area. Visitation ain't part of your package. No comment. I don't want to go too much down that rabbit hole. But he has 3 days to pay for the medical fees for his mother. But his door won't open because he's behind on rent. And yeah, there's some stuff. Thank you, Evo. There's some stuff going on. So okay, he's losing his rent. He can't wash his clothes. He's losing his school thing. His mother's is fine. She's stable. Everything's cool. But he's got to pay. So he finds out that she has some money set aside. So then this is the important part. There's so much good writing in this episode for how much bad writing there is. It's really frustrating. Because you notice how they just kind of quietly slide under the rug the fact that he plunders her account, hacks into her account, takes the money out of it, and uses that to pay the medical fee. So the medical fee is paid for. Okay, that's important. Then he goes trying to find more money to pay for rent. That's when he tries to sell the military-grade cyberware, right? Yeah, sorry, I don't have platinum. So all of that's slid neatly under the rug. We do a quick fast-forward thing. There's also a recurring thing. 2 times in this episode, they bother to show the shuttles taking off in the distance. That's a really minor point, and honestly, usually I see the setting doesn't do much with that. Even Cyberpunk 2077 didn't do a lot with the shuttle things. But the long and the short of it is, up there, that's where the real wealth is. And we're just going to leave that where it is. So then he gets to school, and the bully's there. Literally beats the crap out of him. Just activates his own cyberware and beats the crap out of him. Okay, cool. And immediately after having the crap beaten out of him and being told to drop out of school, he's told, "Oh yeah, by the way, your mother's dead." So anyways, here's a thing. Hello, you have our condolences about your loss. Would you like to talk about our cremation package? After all, there's only so much you can do on a discount package. So then they start talking about how he's late on, like, I don't even remember what it is. He's late on something, which means there's going to be extra fees to pay off before he can start paying off the debt. And then there's this other tidbit where he's trying to pay off the rent, and he's going to get kicked out of there, which is going to prevent him from paying off the rent. And how many of you have heard of poor tax? I'll just go ahead and start talking about it. Brief, don't worry. I'm going to try very hard not to dive down this particular rabbit hole. But the poor tax is actually a concept. It's not a literal tax. The concept of the poor tax is when you attach a whole bunch of additional fees to exist. If you want to cash a check, well, if you don't have the proper infrastructure and setup, well, that's going to be a fee to do that. If you want to get a loan, well, it's going to be a bit of a... It's functionally a fee because the extra added interest you're going to have to pay on top of that loan. In order to get the money now, in order to pay for your rent, which itself is behind, so you have to pay the late fee on that one too. And there's this other thing, and so forth and so on. It's this horrible, horrible thing that honestly should probably stop existing. Like, I don't really want to go too far into this rabbit hole. The point of the fees, generally speaking, at least the way it's always been sold, is it's there to to discourage people from being late or from, not having proper infrastructure or whatever. But the problem with that is all it actually applies to is poor people. The only people that it really affects are people who already don't have the things that they need to make all this stuff happen, right? So all the people who are normal people, at least with regards to financials, this isn't going to apply to them. That's why it's called the poor tax, because it only affects one type of person. Yeah, no, if you don't have the money to fix a cavity, later on it's going to be much more expensive to fix it. And she even mentioned earlier, now that we tried to go around the system, it's going to cost 10 times as much. That's poor tax in a nutshell. You'll notice that there's hints, they don't actually say it out loud, but hints that they've been trying to nickel and dime the people at this school for quite a while too. I mean, the mere fact that you have to pay a licensing fee upgrade in order to be able to keep accessing the school you're already going to, this is all it needs to, doesn't it? Now, it's not a tax to anybody else because they've got the money, but you don't, so you have to pay more. You get it? That's poor tax. It is there to try and prevent people from accumulating money. Put a simple way, it's there to keep poor people poor. That's what it does. Whether it's designed to do that or not, that is the reality of what poor tax accomplishes. Hence. So, we see, charging for school books. No comment. the school I went to, the college I went to, had a whole system that they were proud of. Now, granted, this is early aughts. This is like 2000, 2001, 2002. But they had a whole system in place that they were so proud of, where you could then sell back your books back to the library there after you had bought them for like 10% of the price. But still, they had that system where you could get some of your money back. That was unusual. I don't know if that's unusual now. It's been 20 plus years since then, but that was unusual. And they were proud of that. That was a selling point for going to that college. Anyways, so trauma. So your mother's dead. You're behind on everything. Bully literally calls him to brag about his dead mother. Of all of the things they do in the trauma conga line, that's the one that works for me the best. In fact, I would actually skip over several of these. Again, I get it, but like I said earlier, they hit the button too hard, right? This is too much misery. It goes beyond anything that it's trying to actually accomplish, and instead just becomes, yeah, okay, come on, let's get on with it. Because that's all I felt for like the latter half of the episodes. Yeah, okay, come on, let's go. But I do think the bully calling up to say, hey, your mother's dead, ha ha ha, metaphorically, that actually worked. I was with that. It's probably the one bit I would actually keep. You know, mother dies because trauma team isn't dealing with it. Okay. She's going to be fine, but you're on basic package, so you don't get to visit her or anything like that. So he doesn't even get to say goodbye to his mother. Then, like the bit with the cremation thing, sure. And then finally, you know, you get to the bully calling in, hey, by the way, your mother's dead, haha. Each of those beats I just mentioned, I'm with. It's a nice progression. It makes a degree of sense. Instead, we have like twice as much of that over the course of the episode, and it just gets to the point of unbelievable. That's true, play triple. I hadn't thought about that. So yeah, I get it. We're rock bottom. Yeah, I get it. Okay. And then the episode ends with him being like, it's time to chrome up. And it's said in such a like, it's time to gear up kind of a vibe. And like, I feel like that tone is wrong. Like, yeah, everything about this is a very bad idea. He doesn't even know what this hardware even is. What this probably should have been done, like, I get it. Again, punk, the whole idea is the defiance. And this should have been defiant, but instead it comes across as heroic. And this probably shouldn't come across as heroic. This shouldn't be the hero getting ready to go out and fight bad guys. This should be, screw you, should be the overwhelming vibe of this scene. It just doesn't work. And that brings me to the end of the episode. Short stuff, 22s. We're not in any hurry, but we'll probably knock out quite a few of these today. How would I redo the scene? Just execution. Maybe add a little bit more violent language. Change the tone of him. Change the body language. Just grabbing the thing and saying, you're going to put this goddamn thing in me right now. You know, just something along those lines. Instead of, it's time to chrome up. Like, come on. It literally sounds like a catchphrase. It literally sounds like, okay, Cyberpunk Rangers. All right, everyone, team, it's time to chrome up. Ha! 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 And then they, like, right? Doesn't it just have that vibe to it? Yeah, no, actually, maybe even show, like, if we're cutting out some of the trauma, show some of the trauma of actually what it's like to get the cyberware hooked up from someone who isn't a particularly good doc, right? Show this Ripper doc. As he doesn't strike me as a really, really good Ripper doc, not like the guy we had in 2077. So, like, maybe have him come across more along the lines of, okay, let me just hook this up. Yeah! Okay, let's try this over here. Yeah! Okay, this is weird. I think it's working. Yeah! Anyways, Spock's brain reference. All right, so, review. Rating. While we're talking about rating, that's another example of Portax in universe. You go to a bad Ripper dock and get some cheap hardware. You're going to pay for that down the road. But it's cheaper. Oh, I could buy that loaner. Yeah, Fingers is actually a good example of that. Yeah, I mentioned this during our Cyberpunk run we did. We got damned lucky to have Vic. Like, a good Ripper doc is invaluable in that setting. And he knew exactly what he was doing. Yeah, we got a frickin' saint. Yeah, it's true. You also pay for it in the moment. I would say yellow is definitely the ceiling here. There's some questionable writing, and there's some questionable moments. And like I said, I don't care about David at this point. It's just, hey, so then he found a cute, adorable rabbit, but then the rabbit got diseased, and so he took a hard job, and he got beaten up every day by giant guys who hit him with oranges, and then eventually he ends up finally getting the money to save the rabbit, but the surgery fails, and so the rabbit dies. But as it's dying, it slices him and it infects him, and then he has to cut off his arm. So he's trying to replace the arm, so he gets another job getting beat up by oranges to replace the arm. But unfortunately, that doesn't work either, and so now he's just got to go without an arm, and he's got like twigs. He shoved twigs from a nearby tree into his arm to replace his hand, and I'm just sitting here going, okay, like, I get it. I'm exaggerating, but you get my overall point. Yeah, no, the kid's gonna get himself killed. Honestly, that's probably exactly what should happen. To be blunt, is that David should go and die. I don't mean that like in an unkind way. I mean that would be logical progression. It's like, I'm gonna be a punk, okay, and then he encounters anyone with real hardware, anyone with actual hardware. Like, he goes against Max Tech, and that's the end of that. Boom. However, I think I will agree with yellow. I will admit it's a low yellow for me. I'm going to be honest about that. But I do still think it qualifies. I do still think that there's enough good on display and enough establishment of what Cyberpunk is, and the setting of the characters and all that. There's enough establishment that, okay, I'll give you that. Thank you very, very much, Walker. Always appreciate it. I'll jot that down for Chained Echoes, the FF Audits, Kingdom Hearts block. Yeah, any decent merc would zero him instantly. So let's go ahead and yellow this up. Chooms. My fellow chooms. Actually, so, yeah, I was going to say, as weird as it sounds, for all the issues I have with this episode, the reason I agree to yellow, even though it is a low yellow, is it's actually a pretty solid intro to the setting, to the show, to the concept. So, all right, yeah, you've got my attention. So we'll see where they go with it after this point. Oh, yeah, and I did do I love the limo being there. That was actually a nice little touch. He's got armor on the limo. Yeah. Yeah, no, he's got a good service. That's, and yes, I did that entire quest. I did basically every quest when we did the run. That's normal operating procedure for a run. It's one of the biggest reasons I was so hesitant to allow for an audit run of Cyberpunk, is because that's an extraordinarily large amount of content we're going to have to go do again. The good news is that's nowhere near funded. The bad news is it may happen someday. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and chop off next episode, 22 minutes, as usual. See you in a bit.